is take us back to October 3rd, 1979. And just to set the stage, could you tell us a little bit about your respective positions in 1979? Al, maybe you start.
Okay, well, I was the town manager, and town manager works for city council. They're the board of directors, and the mayor's the chairman of the board of directors, and the town manager is the CEO and selects the people that work for the government and makes such decisions as are necessary for the government to function, operate. And Ted was a find from retired from the Navy, and he was the director of Public Works. Mm-hmm. Outstanding director of Public Works. And we were, at the time, we were in my office, and maybe Ted could take it from there about what happened.
Yes, Al and I were discussing some Public Works business when his secretary stuck her head in the door and told us that the senior citizen van had overturned up in the Pequannock area. Didn't know how many people had been hurt or if anybody had been hurt. And so Al and I said, well, to each other, we'll head up there. And we hopped in my car, my town car, and got stopped partway up because of water running across the highway, but a Public Works truck was right behind us, one of the big dump trucks, and Al hopped in that. Well, something I was going to say there. And I caught up with him later on, and we found out the severity of the tornado, which had torn some houses apart, some off their footings, and we found out there was one fatality in Windsor. There had been two, I believe it was one or two men on a pickup truck in East Windsor who were construction workers, got in the pickup truck, and a 2x4 went right through the side window and killed at least one of them. So we were concerned about that, and we were concerned about the bridge on Pequannock Road going over the river. That night, Public Works, and we got all the Public Works people there and started looking at all the damage and making sure people weren't trapped in their homes. And some of the people stayed until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, all night, I guess, some of them, looking for bodies. And the first thing the following morning, they did find the body of a deceased lady, and that was the primary health problem, or fatality, bodily injury, I guess I should say. Then the following day, on Thursday, we started assessing the damage, and Friday we did it and started clearing some of the damage. We took the materials from the broken houses and trees down to the landfill, which we were later able to get permission from the state to burn the materials there. Unusual, but there was just so many. And I have to say, I talked about the Public Works people who were great. They worked long hours, but we had a tremendous outpouring of local citizens who came up every day and would check in at the office that Al set up in the Pequannock School. And people would call in and say they had a certain problem or thought they had a problem, and would assign each inquiry a slip, and then somebody was keeping track of who had got what slips and what the response was to it, so we could follow up. Again, as I said, we had a tremendous number of outsiders come in and help us. Many people came in, ham radio operators came in. And we're calling people all over the country, notifying them that their relatives are okay, or don't worry about them. Of course, when there's tragedy, there's always comedy, unfortunately. And somehow, I can't remember how or why, I went outside. They set up perimeter around the area, and you couldn't get in unless you're a resident. And I got outside the area for whatever reason, But coming back, there was an Army National Guardsman there, and he said, "You can't go in." I said, "Look, I'm Director of Public Works, I got a town car." He says, "You can't go in." So I found a way, and I just left him, and he had a gun, I didn't. So I went around another way to get back there. I was talking about the bridge. We closed traffic on the bridge for a couple hours on Wednesday evening till the state sent some engineers and said it was okay. I had looked at it myself and thought it was okay, but the state had to do it, so.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I got there, they were, it was a search and rescue was going on by the Pequannock Fire Company. And they, plus the police, were doing, searching through the whole area, looking for people and the damage. One of the most important things to realize is that nobody knew what happened. This thing just came out of the river, out of Farmington, went across Pequannock School. I think it got some of the church on the other side, and just went up about 11 miles. It caused tremendous damage in Windsor Locks to the Air Museum and other facilities. And there was a motel complex up there. The roof was gone from the whole complex, and so there were these damages. But we in Windsor, we didn't have cell phones or anything else, obviously. But the Pequannock firemen were fantastic. They went through and they did the search and rescue, and then they brought in others, and the police did handle the traffic. But the most important thing about a disaster like that, a sudden one, is what happened. And we really spent the first week just trying to learn as much as we could. The size of it, the scope, and the number of people that were injured. We lost, I think, all of the houses on Hollowbrook, I think, and they ended up in the ravine, which was their backyard and down. And so it was tremendous damage. And so we started, to figure out what to do. And on the first night, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning in the Pequannock Firehouse. I got a flip chart, and there were, 20 or 30 people there. And we just started brainstorming this situation that we found ourselves in. Because you have plans. The plans are on the bookshelf down at City Hall. And you read them, try to read them. You can't remember everything. But so we took it, did this brainstorming. And we came up with, I think, 2 pages of things. And people just would call out. And I can't tell you the people that were there, but it was citizens, it was people that were affected, it was firemen, police, just everybody, anybody, just come up with something that we needed to do. And we did that exercise for an hour, and then we marked them all as to short-term and long-term. And the short-term were quite obvious. We had to take care of people immediately. But the long-term issues were interesting as well. Out of that came the suggestion that we publish a daily bulletin. And we did. A week later, there was something called the Windsor Phoenix. And that was a newspaper that was delivered to everybody. Ran off hundreds of copies each day. And because one of the things that came up in the session on the night, Wednesday night, was we were worried about rumors. And nobody knew, the extent of the damage. So there was a lot to learn. And as we found out information, we put it out immediately. And that helped a lot. Those were delivered every day by kids from the high school and Loomis and Chafee. And they just went through all the neighborhoods and all the businesses and everything else and handed those out. So, I have to look at my notes every once in a while because it was such a, so many things happened. We also set up the headquarters for the first week in the firehouse. And then later on, we kept using the firehouse. And there was a gal, it was John Silliman's wife, Debbie Silliman. And she organized the kitchen. And that turned out to be one of the most important things of all for all the workers. And she just did a fantastic job. And a lot of her friends and a lot of other people just came in and helped her. So that was taken care of. And then we set up an area it came out in the discussions on Wednesday night in the firehouse. We needed to be concerned about who was missing because we had this large area of homes, many of them destroyed, and where were these people? And we were getting calls from around the country asking about family. And so we set that up with the library in the center of town, and a bunch of people, librarians and citizens just came in and helped out, and we had a pretty good handle on where everybody was. So when somebody called, we could say, no, they're safe, and they're at a hotel, etc.
And about how long did it take you to get that pretty good handle on
Well,
where people were?
it took a couple of weeks because people didn't know that we were looking for them. And some people had left. They left us at the area. And but we kind of put it together, and the gals were great when they did that. I think that was, the search and rescue was over, and then we had, I'm looking at some notes that I have made. We had Salvation Army came in, and you remember they just handed out sandwiches on the
Very good.
on the site, and we had thousands of people came every weekend and during the week to get stuff out of the ravine.
We used to have conga lines.
Yeah.
They would pass, 6 inches, the person next to you, and then they'd pass it. And the lines would be 100 people long.
So how did you get all of these people together and organize them, for instance?
They reported to the Pequonk School, I think it was Al.
Yeah.
And they got assigned to a team, and everybody volunteered, and they, took direction from whoever was telling them they're organizing the teams to go to this address and get in that line. Everybody was very, very helpful. And as I say, people came from a whole surrounding area to help. It wasn't just Windsor residents.
We even had people from Pennsylvania, other places. There was this group, the Mennonites. I'd never heard of them. Showed up, I didn't. And they, their devotion was through carpentry or whatever. And I don't know if you remember, they came in and they built the stairs to the trailers. Tom Lorario, who was in charge of the headquarters there, he arranged for, took him a week, and he got 52 trailers. And Tom was a school teacher, but he worked for the town in the summertime. And ironically, he found a couple of teachers that had trailers in Pennsylvania and Maryland and some other places, I don't even know. And so the trailers came in. And they were, I think, put up on blocks, and it was quite a distance. And so I remember this one man, the whole time he was there for weeks building staircases, wooden staircases for the front and the back of the trailer. And so the Mennonites never asked for any money. I don't know where he stayed. He just would show up every morning and work all day. And there were several that would do things like that. But that was indicative of what everybody was kind of doing. It was people from everywhere who just wanted to help out. I remember particularly, Ted was talking about stuff was coming out of through the lines and up into dump trucks. And I remember the dump trucks coming from surrounding towns. And I must say, Bloomfield was very active. Other towns were. The city of Hartford, they had red trucks, I remember, and they just came day and night, and they did for weeks. And the city manager in Hartford was Eli Friedman at the time, and we made sure one of the things we did when everything was finished was thank everybody for what they had done. But I'll never forget what Hartford did for us. And I went back there when I retired for a couple of years as city manager and interim city manager. And I told that story to them. They had, it was so much later, but it was in 2002 or something like that, and they had forgotten about it. But and people forget what everybody did for us.
Well, I think also, Al, that Ella Grasso came up and made a big pitch to people to help us. And when she came, this is on a Saturday, the 3rd of whatever would be the 6th of October, she brought with her some operating engineers from the operating engineers quarters in Hamden, showed up with a couple of large front-end loaders that can easily tear a house apart. And with dump trucks, I don't know how they got them. We never paid for them. We never asked how much it's going to cost. And they worked all day Saturday, taking down the most dangerous residences. So there was, interest from the governor down.
Governor was terrific. Ella Grasso was marvelous. I mean,
Together, she was very present. She came and visited.
she was
Yes,
she
she
was
was.
there. She had weekly meetings. I think Warren Johnson, who was the mayor, is going to be talking with you, and he can talk about that part of it. But he handled all of the political and outside help in terms of what the governor could do and what the state could do, which was substantial. But we took care of the inside of the house, and he took care of the outside of the house. And it just worked extremely well. I remember the governor called me one morning about something. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd gotten to bed about 3. And she said, "I'll wake you up?" I said, "You never told the governor you were asleep, I guess." I said, no.
You never slept, Al. You're always worried about this town.
But it was, she was wonderful, and the state was very good. But anyway, there were a lot of people that were involved. The city, we had a lot of department heads that took, for example, Charlie Petrillo was our director of health, and he took care of the health issues and dealing with the people who might have been wounded, or some of the issues in addition to that, the food and making sure that everything was safe. And we had Bill Heberbrand helped.
Yep.
He was tremendous help. He worked with the Mennonites. He was the one that took care of that. And
What was Bill's title? What division did Bill run?
It was
Bill Hilbert.
Yes.
He ran buildings and grounds. Yeah, well, buildings. Yeah. So we had our building inspectors up there, of course, helping
Oh, yeah,
people.
all day long.
Yeah, all day long, and telling them, to make sure, because the trailers had to be, the gas and whatever, the water hookups, everything had to be done, and there wasn't anything available, so everything was, done that way, and well, it just was quite an experience, and we still never did know. I thought about it later. Some of the things that you really would want to put in a plan, and I swear to God, one of them would be a helicopter. It would have, because we never could get our hands around the whole thing. Whatever we saw, we took care of, but you never knew how big it was, and we didn't know what happened in Windsor Locks. But we were working a lot, and I know, just personally, the first selectman in Windsor Locks had a heart attack after a few weeks. I hit the wall at about the 6th week. I just could not move, and then it passed, and went back to it. But and I never talked to Ted about what he went through, but it was that kind of effort plus worrying about what was what we hadn't done.
So what kind of hours were you all working?
I don't know.
Sun up to sun down,
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
yeah, and over. Yeah, past it.
All the public works employees work 12-hour days essentially.
We had, I know the Chamber of Commerce, you're going to talk to them. I know they pledged to put in trees, and then we, at the 3rd month, we were detecting some issues as far as the rest of the town was concerned, because we were dealing with this area, and we had everybody up there. And except, I wanted all the department heads, and they were just there. But I think Maxie Patterson was the chief at that time.
He was, yeah.
And he and I had a discussion, and we made the decision that he was going to stay in town at the safety center.
And he was the chief of police?
Chief of
Yeah.
police, yeah, to watch, the rest of the town, because, and we had John Riccio, who was his lieutenant,
Yeah.
who did a great job, and he was up and took care of this area of the town where we had the disaster. And after it was all over, people, there was a question, I remember some people said, well, where was the police chief, Said, wow, the police chief was taking care of, 25,000 people, and we had the other 3,000 for them. So, but it was good. It was good that all the department heads were there. And then, but about after the 3rd month, people were getting a little itchy, and in the rest of the town. So what we did is we just closed down. We left Terry Zersky, who was the social services director, with some people in the Pequannock School, and operated the rest of the project that could deal with the federal government, deal with folks that had to get insurance papers and everything else for the rest of the year. So they were up there for a year. And we all headed back to take care of the rest of the city again. And that worked out, I think, pretty well.
Let me interject here, Al. One thing I learned during this whole operation was check your insurance, because one thing I ended up telling a lot of people was insurance companies make money by taking it in, not by giving it out. And make sure you have adequate insurance and all possibilities are covered.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely, very definitely.
Oh, and one other thing I want to mention, Al talked about Maxie Patterson, the police chief, and the police. And any time there's an incident like this, you worry about looters coming in from Hartford or Springfield or anywhere. So they had to watch about that, and that's why they had the security around the highways coming into Windsor, or into the area, not into Windsor itself. The center was okay.
So you were worried about it, but were there problems?
No.
No.
No, not really. The governor immediately dispatched National Guard
Yeah.
up around the area, I know. And but we didn't, no, that wasn't a problem. One thing you were talking about the insurance, one thing I learned was always have a scribe. The Pharaohs weren't wrong. They had scribes. I think they did. I don't know. I read that somewhere. But a year after this is all over, somebody from the state came out and said, well, we have here an expenditure of $5,000, and that's above the bidding limit for the state. And so Do you have papers about the purchasing process you went through to get that truck? I said, you gotta be kidding. I said, but anyway, what happened, I told him, I said, look, we went to the governor of the state and said, we need this truck. And she said, go out and buy it. And I said, so we did. And I said, we needed the truck. And we had vendors. We know truck vendors, and we knew where to get it, and we knew what we pay, and then it was fair, and everything else. And so he was a state employee, so he said, well, I guess that'll be okay. I said, yeah. So, but I was just glad that I could. We did things with the state and with others that. Everybody was, in an emergency, you give. But when the emergency's over, people say, well, wait a minute. They follow procedures. So. But anyway, I remember that.
People who aren't there ask that question.
The people who aren't there ask
Yeah,
that question.
the procedures.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, is there anything that you would have done differently?
No, we had the whole place. We had everything back in a year.
Oh, yeah.
In 1 year.
Magnificent.
Yeah, I mean, it was just that so many people worked and helped. I can't thank the residents and the people in the rest of Windsor, but the whole area. People were coming in
Right,
from
yeah.
Glass
Oh,
and Drive,
The outpouring of
the
support was
outpouring of
phenomenal.
support was
Just
phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
and not asked for. They just came and said, "Can we help?" We put everybody to work. Sure, they could help.
So someone coming in from, say, West Hartford, just showing up and saying, what can I do? Where would they have been sent?
Well,
they-
the schools were.
Yeah, the
we-
school,
At the school.
at the
And
school,
they'd
yeah.
say what they can do, and there were people there who would say,
Yeah.
okay, well, we need you here, we need you there, and
Yeah,
we never turned anybody away.
yeah. Well, I think,
Strong-
that pretty much,
Yeah. Well, just going back over it, do you have sort of strong visual memories? You were among the first on the scene. The Pequannock Fire Department was already there, but what did you see, what was going through your
well, to me, it looked like hell.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
It
we
was
got one hell of a mess
unbelievable.
to clean up.
Yeah,
That
it
was what
was,
was going through your mind?
Yeah.
yeah, he was going through the.
Public Works.
Public Works, there you go. But no, it was, what happened here. And the tornado was the worst tornado in Connecticut in 100 years. But where did it come from? Well, there were no weather reports. If you hear about, a couple inches of snow for, 3 days from now, but this came out of the,
Out of the blue, you
just
might
out
say.
of the blue, and just, I never did know, did that senior citizen bus get turned over? It probably did, I don't know, but
Well,
when
you
we
got
got
right
there, it
at
was a
some
lot
point in
more than
time,
that, yeah, yeah,
but I think there's only one person got hurt on that,
yeah.
minor injury, if I remember right.
And Pequannock School had the roof, part of the roof blown off. But yeah, and it all looks just fine now.
Well, I think you were telling me when we talked that people have come to you and asked you for advice on coping with disasters.
They
What
did.
were some of the things that really
Yeah.
what would you say to other town managers, other public work directors who are faced with a sudden and cataclysmic disaster like this?
Well, I went to the city managers conference, followed, and that was, I think it was the following year, because I think it happened about the time of the tornado. They had this conference, and but anyway, I talked about it, and it was mostly to keep track. Had somebody, one was the scribe, which nobody seems to think about, but that was really important, and to write down every day what happened and what we were doing, and the progress that was being made.
And we did that.
And we did that, yeah.
With the Windsor Phoenix.
Yeah,
That's
that was the
record.
Phoenix, yeah. And that people hadn't thought of, just the newspaper every day, because there were rumors all the time, and but I think people you know, the way we handled everything, people just really responded well too.
Mm-hmm.
And also the volunteer firemen, you know, you can't appreciate them enough because they were there. I think, and the other companies came up, but John Silliman, you know, was in charge of, that was Pequannock, he was the Pequannock fire chief, and did a great job. And other members of fire departments in the rest of the city came up too. But they had to be careful too, because we couldn't tilt everything. We had to be careful. For example, in Wilson, we had to keep that fire department where it was to make sure, because there could be a fire in the rest somewhere else in town. And so they had to be ready to handle that, because we could not divert anything. Everything had to come to us. So we had to make sure that we left enough in the rest of the city that if anything happened there, you know, and that's kind of what happened in the end of the third month. People started saying, looking around, I see a lot of people
What
here.
about us?
And so we had to,
Pequannock Fire was, you know, you might say the first responders.
they were.
I mean, before the term became popular, they were the first responders and did a wonderful job. Everybody in the whole town did a wonderful job, really.
Yeah. So,
Is there anything that you'd like to say that we haven't talked about? Anything we haven't covered? Time. Think about it.
I would say that the residents of the Pequannock area were very resilient. And they, you know, accept the fact that there'd been a tornado and they had to get on with life. The only complaint I ever heard was people complaining about insurance,
yeah.
not having enough. Well,
Not having enough.
they thought they had, but they didn't. And nobody expected a tornado.
Yeah.
And it was very important that we had, you're right about the insurance, and also the papers. I think the federal government, there may have been some aid or something
Yes.
like that. And it was very important that we had people there that could help. And the Phoenix also had articles in it on how to go through all of that. So we really, you know, took a customer attitude towards it, you know, making sure that what was it possibly that people needed that we could provide. And so, you know, that helped a lot. We never had any complaints.
Now, were there town services to tornado victims that maybe, you know, permit fees waived? I think there was some
Yes,
mention
yeah.
in
Well,
Phoenix.
well, ironically,
Tax
assessments,
reductions,
tax assessments all over Connecticut are locked in on October 1st. That's the date, whatever town you're in. And this happened on the 3rd. So our residents were on the tax, they were on the tax rolls for having a house, you know. And now on the 3rd, they didn't have a house. And so we had, you know, the council, they had to waive things, and we had, the assessor came up, and, you know, we covered that, of course, you know. We weren't going to send out tax bills for non-existent property, although, you know, it was there on October 1st. But and so all of those kinds of arrangements were made, and you know, the town council, of course, was very concerned about that everybody, you know, be treated fairly and that kind of thing. But that, yeah, that was it. So the assessors got involved, the tax collector, and we, you know, but anyway.
Yes, and the town did not charge people for cleanup. I mean,
Right.
normally, you know, somebody demolishes a house, they have to pay to have stuff taken away, but the town did not charge people. It was all free.
So we done the ravines were back
Yeah.
the way they were.
Yeah.
The streets were, the lawns, everything, the houses. So it was, I was very proud of what everybody was able to accomplish. But then again, I don't know much of what happened in Windsor Locks, you know. And as I've gone over some of the information, you know, on Google and the reports by the reporters on the television, I learned quite a bit of what happened.
Well, Al, if I remember right, though, Windsor Locks, of course, the Air Museum was the worst thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just guessing 90% of the damage was in Windsor.
Exactly, yeah, that's right, that's right. But it was called the
So-
Windsor Locks tornado. Yeah, because they had that physical damage, but we really had the most damage as far as homes are concerned, yeah, and families. So,
I can remember one particular couple of old, really old people. Well, I guess Al and I are that way now, but, you know, they were in their 80s or something, and their poor house was uninhabitable. And, you know, they didn't know where to go, but town people under Al and Terry Zersky, you know, got them settled and everything, so. The whole town, Al's whole set. Al was great at selecting talent, including me, to head his departments. And they're all great to work with, Al and us. I really enjoyed my time here.
yeah, well, yeah, that was all part of it. Anyway,
Well, I just, hats off to both of you. Just an amazing response, and that's one of the messages that we'll hope to get out here.
well, you know, Christine, when you look back and you see how how the federal government handles some of the things, I mean, I watch the television, I'm just shaking my head, you know? I mean, the thing in, was it Katrina, the one with all the people
Yes.
in the,
New Orleans?
yeah, in New Orleans, in that big building. They were, what was it, convention center or
Yeah,
something?
yeah,
And
yes,
and
yeah.
they didn't have water, they didn't have the sewers all back, and no food and all that. You know, there's just, you look at it and you just say, well, you know, and then this recent one in Puerto Rico, you know, where they rebuilt, they're rebuilding the electrical grid the same way they found it was before the, you know, as if, you know, 30 years hadn't passed, that they had an old system, and you don't replace that. You could go in there and do everything new, you know, and do it fast. And just, I'm astounded at some of the stuff I've seen.
So were
Oh.
there improvements that you made having to replace all of the kind of infrastructure?
Oh, yeah,
required?
yeah, all of
What,
it. The water lines, you know, I mean, the MMDC, and we had the stuff to the houses themselves. Everything was brand new. But it was just that people have such great ideas. You know, we found that out on that Saturday night. You know, everybody had a different, and somebody would think of something nobody else in the room thought of, and they say, oh my God, of course. And so you just got to get a whole bunch of people together and figure out, and everybody contributes. And, you know, and I probably had people in that room that were, you know, head of their Boy Scout troop or something, or, you know, or on the vestry of a church, had experience with all kinds of administrative problems and issues, and they contributed, you know. So that's why it's just so, you know, you look at Puerto Rico and the bureaucracy and everything else, and it's just, you know, they just didn't know what they were doing. You know, they're very good people though, but I just.
One thing we didn't really highlight was that, and you just brought up, a lot of the Boy Scout troops and Girl Scout troops and stuff,
Yeah.
they organized and they came with the uniforms and did work to, you know, work that they were capable of doing, which was good learning, training for them and helped the town.
Yeah.
I can't believe well, I can believe it, but I mean, it's hard to get your hands around how much help we had from the residents and how much understanding there was.
And maybe that's because we asked the residents what to do,
Yeah.
what they needed.
What they needed.
Yeah, just get out of the way, you know. Just try to get them what they needed. You know, it's not about process. And that's one of the other things, of course, I do remember is somebody said, well, how about the plans and everything, you know? And I think we had civil defense plans, you know, when atomic bombs were going to come and everything, get under the desk. Anyway, I think we're past that. But anyway, the plans are never for what the emergency is, you know? I mean, you can't predict what's going to happen. So you just got to depend on people using their heads, you know, and give them a chance.
Well, a tornado in Windsor was as unlikely as a tornado anyplace.
Right.
I mean, it was,
Yeah.
maybe God didn't like you that day, Al.
I don't know.
Well, I do remember you talking about that night, and you saying that there was no rank in that room.
No rank.
That it was just
No.
chemical
None.
process and people coming up with an idea.
And there was no rank throughout the whole thing. I mean, the whole year, and certainly in the first 3 months. No, it wasn't like that. And the city employees were fantastic because they, you know, they just worked with people.
Well, remember, Ernie Phillips came back from vacation in Seattle.
Yeah, that's
To
right.
assist.
Ernie was there,
Yeah, he
And
came
who
back
was
early.
Ernie? Who was Ernie Phillips?
He was the town engineer.
town engineer.
He worked for me he was a town
Yeah.
engineer. He canceled it, or he cut short a trip vacation in Washington
Right.
State. They come back to help.
Yeah.
And, you know, nobody complained about working. We all understood it was a group effort.
You were saving your town.
Well,
Yeah.
saving that area, for sure.
But anyway, I think you'll get, you know, I'm sure Warren Johnson has some interesting stories too, because he dealt with the state and the governor, and he was great because we could just operate under his umbrella. You know, I mean, he just, you know, took care of making sure that we wouldn't be interfered with. And by the state, I guess, I don't know, but somehow we were able to just get it done without a whole lot of bureaucracy or anything.
Maybe he
And that
kept
may
it
have
out
been
of
the
way.
governor too.
Yes.
That was Delegasso, yeah. She'd be out there at 6 in the morning in her car, going up and going around. And she would also, she showed up just to where we were in a trailer in the yard there at Pequannock School, and she shows up one morning, and she's got some department heads behind her, you know, they always went together, and she said, I understand there's a family so-and-so up there, and that you've done some work, and, you know, I want to go up and see it. And Tom Lorenzo said, oh my God, we're not ready, you know, and it hasn't been taken care of or something. So he ran up, you know, and he just got there ahead of it, you know, got ahead of her. And she was on, she was hands-on. Great lady. Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway,
that's what we remember.